Today I'm out in my outdoor pantry and I'm collecting a bunch of really delicious ingredients. We live in the travel trailer, so we built an outdoor pantry where we keep all of our grocery items in here. So today what I'm going to bring to you is my most delicious recipe for lasagna. Now, I made lasagna for a really long time in the beginning years of our marriage, and I just never was pleased with it. I'm Italian. I grew up in an Italian family, and Hans is from an Italian family, and so you would think I would have had lasagna mastered, but I didn't. Every time I would serve it, it would just kind of run all over the plate. It didn't just stay in that nice, perfect, big piece like you get at a restaurant. And I would try different things, and I never could get it to be a good, solid, flavorful piece of lasagna. And every once in a while it has success, but then I couldn't figure out what I had done to make it turn out right. So I finally found the perfect recipe and I tweaked it to our liking, and now I love our lasagna. It's a 5-cheese lasagna. We've got cottage cheese, we've got ricotta, we've got provolone, mozzarella, and did I say Parmesan? Anyway, there's 5 different cheeses in there. And we're not going to have to pre-cook the noodles. It's just really, really easy. So I'm out here, we're going to gather up a bunch of ingredients, and then we'll head into the kitchen and we're going to make the most delicious lasagna ever. And in here we've got our preserved eggs from last summer. We've got it in a water lime solution. So this is how we have fresh eggs all year long. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to have to season my pork, because we actually purchase a whole hog, and once a year or once every, well, it lasts us more than a year, but and I get a lot of ground pork, and so it's just ground pork. There's no flavoring in it, so I always have to season my breakfast sausage and my Italian sausage, but it's not a big deal at all. I have a jar of seasoning. I make a big huge mason jar of like a quart-sized jar of the breakfast sausage seasoning as well as the pork sausage seasoning, and then when I need it, I'll just dump my spices in, mix it up, and I'm ready to go. So we are just going to take the Italian sausage, the bulk Italian sausage, and the hamburger meat, and we're just going to toss it into a pot and brown it. I really love mixing up my own breakfast sausage and Italian sausage, because I can control the ingredients that are going into it. I don't have a lot of the bad ingredients. That sausage is actually really a pretty bad thing to buy in the grocery store, like as far as the ingredients that you find in them. So this just keeps it really, really pure. Alright, so this pot is a bit overkill for the amount of sauce that we're going to be making, but it's what I have on hand, and it will keep the splattering all inside. So I've got some hamburger meat that I'm adding to that pork sausage, and we're just going to brown this. So the meat is cooked, and now we're just going to dump a bunch of ingredients in and stick it on to simmer. Now I suggest that if you're going to make this, that you just real quick sometime in the morning make this sauce, because it does need an hour to simmer, which that is one of the reasons why I love this recipe. My spaghetti sauce used to be such a big deal. It used to be a ton of ingredients that went into it, and it would really need to simmer all day long to cook it down, to make it thick, and to get all the flavors combined. And so it was kind of an all-day project. So I would make the sauce on one day, and then I would make the lasagna on another day. But I love this recipe because I just dump everything in. I just let it simmer uncovered for about an hour, and it tastes amazing. It is so delicious. And so, you know, I can make lasagna the same day that I make my sauce, and the sauce just really takes very, very quick. All we're going to add to our meat is our tomato sauce and our tomato paste and some spices. So I've got I think these are 8-ounce cans of the sauce. And a lot of spaghetti sauce recipes, they'll have you add water, and then that water, you know, it's very, very thin, and that's why it takes all day to simmer, is to cook that water down and to thicken your sauce enough to be able to use it. And I'm not adding any additional water to this. I'm just adding my paste, and it's got quite a bit of paste, so that's really going to help thicken it up as well. So if you're wanting to make this for dinner, I just suggest getting the sauce done, you know, in the morning. Let it simmer. You know, you can just throw these ingredients into your pot first thing in the morning, and in an hour you'll be ready to make your lasagna. So we've got, we're going to add 2 garlic cloves. Now, my garlic, I actually ferment my garlic. It makes it super, super healthy. So that's why it's in a jar. But, you know, just use your garlic that you buy. And it's about 2 cloves. Now, if you want the printable recipe, go ahead and click the link below to get that recipe with all the amounts and any additional information you would need to make this. You know, I'm not going to give you all the exact measurements here. So just, you know, catch it there in the link below. It'll be good. And then I've got some sugar. And I don't know if I mentioned, this was Italian seasoning. And then I've got some salt and some pepper. Now, I mean, if you have a favorite seasoning that you like to put in your spaghetti sauce, go right ahead and add it. You know, using the Italian seasoning, that has the parsley, that has the basil, the oregano, it has everything, all those single spices. So it's just really quick dumping that in, and we are done. I don't think you could make a faster and easier spaghetti sauce. So we're gonna stick it on here, we're gonna let it simmer for an hour, and then we'll come back and actually make the lasagna. Our sauce is looking beautiful, and it smells super delicious. So we're gonna turn this off, and then we're gonna get busy on making the lasagna. So this is gonna be really quick. All we're gonna do is we're gonna mix the 5 ingredients. We've got the cottage cheese, we've got the ricotta cheese, some eggs, parsley, and the Parmesan cheese. That's what's going to go into the bowl for the filling. And then we will use provolone and mozzarella to layer in between. We're not going to mix that into this mixture here. We're just going to get this mixed up real good and then set it aside. So here's one trick for you when you're using grated cheese. If you freeze your cheese beforehand, which I do, I buy a whole bunch of mozzarella cheese, raw organic mozzarella cheese, and I buy a big box of it and I freeze them all. But when you take it out of the freezer, you don't even have to grate it. It just crumbles. See that? You can just do that real lightly in your fingers and it will crumble up really super nice. So it saves a ton of time than having to grate all your cheese. Now it doesn't grate like in what you're used to seeing come out of the cheese grater. And if I needed it, you know, to put out for dinner, like to put on tacos or something like that, I wouldn't probably do this. But this is all going to get melted in your casserole, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like after it's grated. So our meat sauce is done. It's ready to be used. Now, at this point, I do add a little bit of water, and that is because I know I said that I don't, usually you let it simmer on the stove to cook off all the water to thicken up your spaghetti sauce. And that is what I do if I'm just going to serve this on noodles and I just want a nice, thick spaghetti sauce. But because I'm going to make lasagna, now this is a really fun trick. A lot of people, when they make lasagna, they make it really a lot more difficult than it needs to be. They will cook their lasagna noodles in boiling water. Then when they're pretty soft, they'll take them out and set them aside, and they'll go through all their noodles doing that. Then they make their lasagna, they layer everything up. But you don't need to do that. If you just add a little bit of water to your spaghetti sauce and just put your shells in there hard, just straight out of the box, the noodles will soak up the water and they will cook. You don't need to simmer them on the stove like when you make spaghetti or macaroni noodles or whatever, and you have your big pot of boiling water and you add your noodles to it and you cook them until they're soft. That is not what you need to do with these. A lot of people do that, and it's just a whole nother step that makes the whole process feel like making a lasagna is a lot of work. And that's why I say this isn't a lot of work. You are literally dumping, a handful of ingredients into a pot, letting it simmer while you clean your dishes and get all your other ingredients ready. You're mixing up your cheese mixture, grating your cheese, and now we're just going to layer it all up and pop in the oven and we're done. This is a very easy and quick dinner. So depending on how thick your sauce is, if it's really, really thick, you could add a cup of water. If it's just slightly thick, you could add maybe a half a cup. I'm adding just about a half a cup to this, but I'll have this written out more in the printable recipe that you can access by clicking the link below. So now I've got my casserole pan, and the recipe that will be on the blog, it will be a 9x13 casserole pan. I am doing a little bit bigger. I added a few more ingredients. If I'm going to make lasagna, I'm going to make a big, huge one, and then I'm going to slice it up and freeze a lot of it for Hans's lunches. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to put a layer of spaghetti sauce on the bottom of my casserole pan, just enough to cover the bottom. Now the next step will be to lay your lasagna noodles on top of that sauce. And I always have to break these when you're going across here. Sometimes they kind of shred. So you can really just piece it in. You don't have to be real exact. I mean, no one's going to be able to see this at all. Right, now I'm just going to put a few cupfuls of this cheese topping. Kind of just spread it around like that, and then we'll, spread it with a spoon. So just make a thin layer. You don't want anything to be too thick, because we're going to make several layers of all of this. So just keep each layer, just a normal, just to cover it. The next layer is going to be our provolone cheese. And I'm going to put a bit of that mozzarella cheese. I'm not going to use a ton here, because I really like to save most of this for the very top. Then you're going to put another layer of noodles. Now we're going to add another thick layer of spaghetti sauce. And the moisture in the spaghetti sauce, it will cook your noodles. This is so much easier than pre-cooking your noodles. Now, if you've ever been interested in making manicotti, if you're familiar with manicotti, and it just looks so hard because most people pre-cook those noodles and then they have a soft noodle that they're trying to stuff with cheese, and it's splitting and it's limp and it's just really, really hard. I actually don't know how they can do it when they pre-cook the noodles. This is what I do with that as well. And making a dinner, a manicotti dinner, I can have a pan of manicotti stuffed and ready to go in 5 minutes because I don't cook the noodles. I do the very same thing. I add a little bit of water to my sauce, and the noodles will just soak up that water, and then you'll have nice thick sauce and perfectly softened noodles. We're going to put the rest of this cottage cheese, ricotta, Parmesan mixture on here. So there's going to be 2 layers of this in your lasagna, and since this is sitting right on top of your sauce, you're going to want to be careful when you spread this out so that it doesn't just get all mixed up in your sauce. And I'm just going to be real careful to not mix the two. But honestly, if they do get mixed, when this thing all gets cooked, you probably won't really know a difference. I only plan for 1 layer of the provolone cheese, but if you have a few leftover slices and you want to use them up, just go ahead and throw them on there just in random spots. I do have 3 more slices, so I'm just gonna throw them in here as well. I will put a little bit of mozzarella on there. I mean, this is just an amazing lasagna. It is just loaded with delicious flavors. So we're going to put the final layer of noodles. I like to put noodles on the top of everything because when you slice this, it just looks very pretty to have the noodles with the curly edges on the very top. We're going to end layering up with the sauce. Now, a lot of people will end with sauce and then they'll put cheese all over the top, which I will do that, but at this point I don't really want to add the cheese to the very top because I'm going to cover this. I'm going to stick some foil over the top, and then it's going to go in the oven and it's going to bake for 45-50 minutes. And that cheese always ends up just getting stuck to the foil and it's not very pretty. And so what I will do is I cover this up and then I bake it for the full amount of time. And when these noodles are soft and this is done cooking, I take the cover off and then I put all my grated cheese all over the top and pop it back in the oven and let it melt, get a little bit browned on the edges. The cheese always looks so pretty when it's kind of brown. And then, I'll serve it. And that way the cheese on top is really pretty and it doesn't end up getting stuck to your foil. So we're going to end with this layer for now, but we will come back and add that layer of cheese at the very, very end. Before I started layering this up, I went out and I turned on my oven. I preheated it. And so that's been coming up to heat. And now I'm going to cover it. Now I do want to give you guys a tip. I do not like covering my food with foil. I mean aluminum foil. That gives you the first clue right there. That's aluminum. And as that cooks and as this is bubbling, it's what makes up aluminum, that is going into your food, and that is directly linked to Alzheimer's. It's a really bad idea to cook food in aluminum. But we do need something to cover this. So what I have found to do is I have a piece of parchment paper. Now, I purchased these by a box of about 250. They're pre-cut, they're perfect. I use them on just about everything. And I will lay that over, there's no chemicals, this is completely safe for this to touch your food. So I will lay that on my casserole. Then I will put the aluminum foil over the top of that. And so this is protecting my food from the aluminum actually touching my food. So yes, I still use aluminum, but I don't put it right in contact with my food. So I will link these pieces of parchment paper. I got them on Amazon, and I'll have a link for you there, so that if you want to pick up a box of them, they don't cost that much, and there's like 250 in there, so they last months and months, a super long time, so it's very much worth your purchase. Now, another tip, I do not just set this in the oven like this. I will put this on top of a cookie sheet, because there are times that as it's bubbling and some of the liquid escapes, and it's just going to go in your oven and make a big mess. Then it's going to smoke and burn, and it's just a pain. So if you put this on a cookie sheet and then put it in your oven, the cookie sheet will catch any spills, and it will make it so much easier to clean up. So I'm going to put it on the cookie sheet. I'm going to pop it out in the oven, and it's going to cook for about 45, 50. I've had it sometimes it could take up to an hour of cook time. And the way that you're going to know that this is finished is when you, maybe about 45 minutes, you can test it. Pull back the foil and take a fork, or probably a fork, and poke it in there. And you can tell when a noodle is done cooking. If it's soft and you're like, that's ready, I could eat that, then it's ready. But if you're kind of like, that still feels, it's not hard like it was, but it still feels a little stiff, then, cover it back up, put it in for another 10 minutes, and just keep feeling it with a fork. And you'll know when it's done almost just by looking at it. The noodles will have kind of popped up a little bit because they've soaked up all the moisture, so there's not going to be bubbly spaghetti sauce like there had been. It's going to have soaked up all the moisture, and you're going to see the noodles, coming up amongst all that cheese, and you're just going to be able to tell that it's ready. But, kind of feel it with a fork, and when it's soft, then we're going to remove, we're going to take the foil off, and then we're going to put the last layer of cheese, and we're going to pop it in. It's not going to hurt it to cook for an additional 5 minutes once it's done. It'll be just fine. It's not like it's going to overcook it. So for now, we're just going to go put it in the oven, and I'll see you in about an hour. Our lasagna has been cooking for 50 minutes, so I am going to check it and see if it is done, and then we can put the cheese on top. It smells so amazing. Oh wow, I think this is going to be done. But I'll show you how to check it. So I'm just going to take a fork, and I'm going to press on this. And just by feeling this, it is very soft, but I can tell it's still just a bit too starchy, and it needs to cook. Like a lot of times when it's at this point, it just needs another 10 minutes, and then it would be perfect. And I'm noticing that there's just a little bit of liquid on the top, which I don't want liquid at all. I want nice thick spaghetti sauce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in the oven, and I'm not going to put a lid on it. And that way the steam can evaporate and cook off some of this moisture, while these noodles, they are just about done. I can feel that. I mean, I actually could eat them, but I'm sure you have had a noodle before where it could have cooked just a little bit longer. That's exactly what this feels like. So we're going to put this back in the oven, and we'll check it in about 10 more minutes. All right, that last 8 minutes in the oven, it really made a difference. I can tell it has completely soaked up all the moisture, and all of the noodles have kind of popped up, and you can just tell that they are completely done. Everything is super soft. So it's going to be perfect to add the layer of cheese and to put it back under just long enough to get the cheese melted, and then it will be done in the oven. See, I don't know if you guys can tell, this is very soft, and all of the moisture has been sucked up. So all of over here, it's just very wavy and soft. So this is completely finished. So now we're going to put the cheese on it. Now I do like to, I do the crumbled cheese But if I do have a little bit of mozzarella that I can grate for the top, the grated cheese does look a little prettier on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and I did have a block of mozzarella that I could grate for the top. Well, that last couple minutes finished it off. It is just perfect. At the very end, I turned the oven on to broil, and I kept this under for just about 2 minutes so the top could get just that little bit of browned cheese, and it just looks beautiful. So now I like to let my lasagna set for at least 10-12 minutes before I serve it. That way it can really firm up. If you were to serve it right now, it probably would be a bit soft on your plate, but if you give it a good 5, 10, 15 minutes before you serve it, then it will be perfect. It will stay solid and it is going to be delicious. If you've ever made a lasagna, when you serve it, it just kind of gushes out over the plate. Here, I'll get this side. You'll appreciate what this looks like. You see that? It's just the perfect slab of lasagna. You know, if you had a deep dish casserole pan, you could probably add another layer or two and make this even taller. I was at the top of my casserole pan, so I couldn't add any more, but you sure could. So if this looks delicious and you want to make yourself your own lasagna, then go ahead and click the link below and you'll be able to pick up the printable recipe and any other additional instructions you might need to know while making this. I bring a lot of delicious content to my channel. A lot of baked goods, a lot of salads and soups and drinks, and a lot of holiday dishes. And I love to really focus on the tips and the tricks, the techniques, the ways to make things easier, the ways to have successful dishes. So if you would love to keep up with what we put here on our channel, then go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time I post. And if you enjoyed this, I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up. So go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.